Welcome to the Break Room Stories, the audio magazine that specializes in fiction that is weird, strange, absurd, and surreal. I'm head editor Carl First. For this installment, we're proud to feature 144 Elm Street, a story by Hannah Lackoff. Hannah's work has been nominated for the Pushcart Prize and the Story South Million Writers Award, and has been published in Spark, Psychocomp, Flapper House, Kaleidotrope, and Bourbon Pen, among others. Her work has been performed at Wheaton College, and her short story collection, After the World Ended, was published in May 2016. And now, 144 Elm Street by Hannah Lackoff. We'd been married nearly 6 years when we came upon the house. Between both our jobs and a great deal of frugal living, we had finally scrimped together enough to buy a home. Nothing fancy, just a little 1 or 2 bedroom within commuting distance to the city. The age gap between us and our neighbors had begun to widen, and their weekend parties full of thumping bass were taking a toll on our increasingly adult sleep cycles. We wanted a place where we could paint the walls whatever color we wanted, where there was no restrictions about the size and shade of curtains, where repairs were ours to make instead of waiting days for an uninterested super to respond. We had quite romanticized visions of refurbishing a crumbling shack to look like something out of a Home Depot advertisement. We saw ourselves in our immaculately paint-splattered work clothes, laughing together over trim colors and drill saws. We spent our weekends driving around the outskirts of the city, looking for for sale signs in open houses, calling real estate agent numbers, and eating tiny sandwiches off of strangers' plates. It was a little less than 2 miles down Elm Street that we saw it. Blue with white shutters and trim, a large bay window, and a garage attached to the house. Tall and homey, with a rolling yard and 3 stories of neatly painted edging, completely out of our price range. And yet, "Ned," I said, the startle in my voice bringing his gaze up from the map. "That house, it looks just like mine," he said. Ned's childhood home was a sprawling old farmhouse that had once had over 200 acres of land, since split up and sold to different buyers. White with blue shutters and trim, a large bay window, and what had once been stables of a barn only a few feet from the house. 3 stories. Though I had never lived in the house and couldn't be positive, it looked like a mirror image of the Burnson farm, notably untouched by the fire that had claimed the top 2 floors in the family cat just after Ned and I had started dating. The shape of the windows was the same, as was the placement of both chimneys. The basic layout of the roof looked the way I remembered. The only thing it was missing was a couple of trees out front and maybe a tire swing. But as we drove by, I thought I might have seen a stump between the front door and the mailbox. "Turn around," said Ned, rolling down his window so he could stick his head out like a dog. "Drive by again, slower this time." I watched Ned instead of the house as we rolled by. His eyes were bright and his mouth was soft, enchanted. "We have to stop," he said, but my foot was already on the brake. Ned got out slowly, like the survivor of a car wreck checking himself for injury. He craned his neck back until his jaw gaped open. "The chimneys?" I asked. He nodded, teeth clacking together with the exaggerated movement. I took his hand and led the way up the driveway. "Not the front door," he said. "We always used the side." He started to turn, but someone was already opening the inner door and looking out the screen. "Hi," I said, since Ned seemed unable to speak. "We saw your sign in the yard and wondered if we could have a look inside." The woman nodded, her face a crisscross of shadows. "Place is a mess," she said, "but you're welcome to poke around, I guess. We only use the first 2 floors. Third is for storage. There's no attic, you know." "I know," said Ned. Her eyes narrowed at him, but she let us in anyway. The foyer was filled with a combination of boxes and piles of what looked like mildewing newspapers. "It was my father's house," the woman said. Her voice lacked warmth. "He died last year, and we're only now cleaning it out. Just put the sign up this morning. Didn't think anyone was likely to come by." "We're the first?" Ned asked. He seemed delighted. The woman nodded. "I didn't think we were ready, but Jasper said to put the sign out anyway." "Jasper?" Ned asked, even as I was nodding. "Jasper Whittaker," I said. We'd seen his photo on a lot of for sale signs. Teeth a shade too white and a hair a touch too sculpted. Everything he was selling looked like it was made out of plastic and would soon fall apart without even reaching the next decade. Everything except this one. "Son of a gun," said the woman, but her voice lacked any real expression. She pushed her way around the boxes and we followed her into the next room, which was surprisingly open and clean. A few chairs stood around haphazardly. "This is the parlor," our guide said. She did not elaborate. Ned ran his hand over the wallpaper until he found a loose corner. While the woman moved ahead, Ned coughed and tore off a piece about a square inch in diameter. Underneath revealed what would have once been a cream-colored brocade, now yellow with age and glue stains. "Same wallpaper," Ned whispered to me. He pocketed the purloined square and took my hand, only to drop it again when we got to the staircase. He smoothed his palm over the banister post and ignored the woman's explanation of what was to follow in the upper 2 stories. "Not yet," Ned interrupted her, and I could see both worry and eagerness in his eyes about seeing the floors that, in his memory's version, had been burned and gutted long ago. "Is there something else down here we could see first?" he asked. He took his hand off the railing and stepped back. "Like a kitchen? Or a root cellar?" The woman nodded. "Right on both counts," she said. "Only we don't call it a root cellar around here, just a regular basement. Where are you from?" "Iowa," Ned said, earnestly, almost skipping by her to the cellar basement door and flicking on the light in the dark by feel. We descended the stairs, and the heat of the day melted away into the smell of musty carpet. I could hear Ned's disappointed sigh ahead of me. What he and I both remembered as storage shelves of canned and dried goods had been half-heartedly remodeled into a sort of rec room straight out of the 70s. Decaying shag carpet and corduroy-upholstered chairs with the stuffing popping out in fistfuls. Ned towed a rug, probably hoping for a glimpse of the trap door that had once been at the other house, but it was tacked down neatly to the cement floor. Ned followed the woman and I followed them both, and we went back upstairs and into the kitchen. This, at least, remained the same. Big double sink and gas-burning stove, a good-sized window and breakfast nook with built-in bench. Ned slid into the seat, happily turning his back to the modern refrigerator and counter loaded with appliances in various states of disrepair. She let him sit there for a few minutes, sighing impatiently as Ned continued his reverie in oblivion. "Should we go upstairs?" she asked, finally, then walked off without waiting for us. The second floor had some water damage, and had already been emptied of furniture, but the layout was the same as Ned had remembered. "Where was your bedroom?" I asked him. I had only been there a handful of times before the fire, and though I could picture the room perfectly, I couldn't remember where it was located. "At the top," said Ned. "Come on." He pulled me up the second set of stairs without waiting for the woman, and as we ran we could hear her grumbling behind us, apparently too irritated to even ask how we knew where to go. At the top we turned left, then left again, and Ned banged open a door with such force it dented the opposite wall. "This is it," he breathed, arms stretched out, turning in a circle. It was obviously a child's room, or a room meant for storage, and not habitation. The ceiling was sloped down with such severity that Ned could barely stand up straight. the walls tapering so much to one side the room wasn't even a square. It was filthy, too. Not by fire, but by decades of neglect and poor housekeeping. I wondered when was the last time the window had been opened. "Shut the door," said Ned. "Quick." I pulled it closed and locked it too, while Ned knelt down under the window and felt around. "There's a loose board down here. I used to keep... got it!" He pried a plank up with his fingernails. I could hear the woman's footsteps in another room somewhere, searching for us. He reached his hand into the crevasse, groping for something neither of us could see. "When the house burned," he said, grimacing with effort and dust, "I wasn't there. All the stuff from when I was a kid was burned to a crisp. This is where I used to keep my treasures. I never got to find them. Never got to take them with me." "Ned," I said, gently, not wanting to burst his bubble. "This isn't the same house, you know. It looks the same, but it's not. It's just..." Ned gasped, a sound of loud, cartoonish delight, and he pulled his arm out. "This is it," he whispered. I knelt down beside him, and his palm was a little pearl-handled pocket knife, about the size of my thumb, engraved with the letters E.B., Ned's initials. "It was my uncle's," he said. "The one who died in the war. The one I'm named after. I can't believe I left it behind. I can't believe..." The woman knocked on the door. 3 sharp, authoritative knocks. "I don't know who you are or what you're doing," she said as she rattled the handle, "but I think it's time for you to go." Ned shoved the knife in his pocket and slid the board back into place as I opened the door, babbling excuses. "We're very sorry," I said, trying to block her view of Ned as he brushed the cobwebs out of his hair. "This house reminds my husband of the one he grew up in, and we just wanted to see..." "Out!" She gestured with one thumb over her shoulder like something from a western. "Just get out." We fled down both sets of stairs and into the sunlight. The woman followed us. We thought perhaps to make sure we were really leaving, but all she did was pull up the for sale sign and throw it on the porch, muttering something about Jasper Whittaker and his half-baked schemes. She stood just inside the screen door, arms folded, watching as we got into the car and let the air conditioning wash us clean. I turned the key under her eye as Ned pulled the knife out and opened the blade, sliding it ever so softly along the pad of his thumb. "Still sharp," he said in wonderment, as though this precision, the ability of steel to hold its shape even after a decade of neglect, was the strangest thing about that day.
Like being in a grave. Don't stand much more of it.
If you want to go